If you think every subway station on the map actually exists, think again. Tonight, you'll hear two true stories from people who swear they saw something underground that should be impossible. And what they witnessed has never left them. Welcome back to Fear Files Whispered. In this episode, we dive into two terrifying subway encounters that happened right here in the United States. One story about a station that shouldn't exist, and another about a train that only appears at 3:33 a.m. These are real experiences, told exactly as they were shared. So put in your headphones, lower the lights, and let's begin. I moved to Brookline, Massachusetts because my therapist told me change might help me start over. After my brother Ethan vanished the year before, nothing felt real anymore. Not my job, not my apartment, not the friends who didn't know how to talk to me without their voices dipping into pity. I needed distance from everything associated with him, and Brookline felt close enough to Boston to not be isolating, but far enough to feel like I could breathe again. Or at least pretend to. I took the Green Line every morning to get to work. I used to avoid trains entirely after what happened, but eventually I convinced myself that avoiding public transit forever didn't count as healing. Still, almost every time I stepped into a subway car, I remembered that afternoon. Ethan telling me he was catching the train home from Park Street. The text message that said, "Signal's bad. Train glitching. Be home soon." The photo he sent a blurry shot of a station I didn't recognize. And then nothing. No more messages. No calls. Just gone. Police said he probably stepped off at a different station. Maybe got lost. Maybe hurt somewhere. They said people vanish all the time. But that last photo, I saved it for months, studying it until I knew every pixel. The station didn't match any MBTA stop. No signage, no maps, all concrete. And in the far left corner, an opening into darkness that looked less like a tunnel and more like the mouth of something waiting. One evening after work, I found myself scrolling through old files again, things I should have deleted, things that only reopened wounds. But this time, when I zoomed in, something strange happened. The photo flickered like a digital glitch, and for a second, I thought I saw someone standing near the tunnel entrance. I threw my phone on the couch, heart hammering, convincing myself it was grief distorting things, but the image wouldn't leave my mind. A person, a shape, watching. 2 days later, something even stranger happened. While riding home on the Green Line, the train slowed unusually between Kenmore and Fenway. Lights flickered. A low hum vibrated through the floor. Then the train came to a full stop. Not at a platform. Not near anything recognizable. Just darkness outside the windows. A few commuters groaned, assuming another breakdown. But then the speaker crackled. A distorted announcement echoed through the car. Next stop, Hawthorne Station. My blood froze. There was no Hawthorne Station on the Green Line, nowhere on the entire MBTA map. I looked around, expecting someone else to react, but nobody seemed bothered. They just scrolled their phones, sighed into their jackets, or stared blankly at advertisements overhead. The train lurched forward again, slower this time. The hum deepened, until it sounded like the entire rail was trembling. Then, the windows shifted from blackness to concrete walls, old concrete, cracked with vines creeping down like veins. And then we pulled into it, a station, a real one, a physical platform with dim yellow lights flickering overhead, and a sign half torn off the back wall. The visible part read, "Thorn." My stomach twisted. I had seen this place before. Ethan's photo. The design matched perfectly. The cracked pillars, the wide, empty platform. No benches, no posters, No people. It didn't make sense. This station didn't exist. Not on any map, not in any record. Doors opening, the speaker crackled. Before I could react, the doors slid open with a hiss. A blast of cold air hit me far colder than it should have been, like winter air locked underground for decades. No one stepped off. No one stepped on. But the dark tunnel to the left, I recognized it instantly. The one from Ethan's picture. The one he took right before he disappeared. My legs moved on their own. I stepped toward the open door, eyes fixed on that tunnel. Something inside whispered that the truth was finally in reach. I could find out what happened to him, maybe save him, maybe end this nightmare. But just as my foot touched the yellow line on the platform, the train jerked violently. A metallic scream echoed through the car. The doors slammed shut, nearly catching my sleeve. The train shot forward so fast, it knocked me into the seat behind me. A few commuters looked mildly annoyed, but nobody reacted like anything unusual had happened. I pressed my face to the window, but the platform blurred past, swallowed by darkness. When the train finally stopped again, we were at Fenway Station like nothing had happened. Normal lighting, normal signage, people getting off and on. I stumbled out onto the platform, dizzy, gripping a pillar until my breathing steadied. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at Ethan's photo and compared it to the memory burned into my mind. They matched exactly, down to the broken tile near the edge of the platform. The next morning, I couldn't bring myself to get on the train. I walked to work, heart pounding each time I heard a distant rumble of rails, but the fear mixed with something else, a pull, an obsession I'd tried to bury. 2 days later, I finally decided I had to know. I downloaded old MBTA plans, city archives, abandoned stations, canceled projects. Anything that mentioned a station with a name even close to Hawthorne nothing. No record. It was like the station had been erased completely. That night, as I walked home, someone tapped my shoulder. I spun around. A man in a yellow maintenance vest stood there, holding a flashlight. Deep lines carved his face. His eyes looked older than the rest of him. "You shouldn't be researching that place," he said. "It's not for you." My heart stumbled in my chest. "Do you know about it?" "More than I want to," he muttered. "More than anyone should. The MBTA doesn't talk about it. Too many questions. Too many missing." "Missing," I repeated, voice cracking. "Like my brother?" His eyes softened. "I'm sorry, truly, but whatever took him isn't something you can save him from." "But you've seen it?" I demanded, stepping closer. "You've seen Hawthorne Station?" He hesitated for a long moment, jaw clenched like he was fighting himself. Then he nodded once, barely. "It shows up where it shouldn't, when it shouldn't, for people it chooses, and once you step inside," his gaze dropped to the ground. "It doesn't like letting go. Why me?" The man's expression darkened. "Because you already crossed its threshold once." "I didn't," I snapped. "I never." Then I stopped. The basement of grief cracked open inside my mind, and memories rushed up, memories I'd shoved down so deep, I convinced myself they weren't real. The night Ethan disappeared. I had taken the train to meet him, but changed my mind and went home early. I remembered sitting in an empty car, the lights flickering, a low hum, an announcement glitching, and a station just like the one I'd seen 2 nights ago. I had chalked it up to half-asleep imagination, shock, trauma-twisting memory. But I had been there, even for just a moment, and something had looked back at me from the tunnel. The maintenance worker stepped closer, lowering his voice. "If you keep chasing that station, it'll open its doors for you again. And next time, you won't come back." I swallowed hard, my throat burning. "I need answers," He shook his head. Answers are the last thing Hawthorne gives. With that, he turned and walked away. I tried to call after him, but a train rumbled through the station at that exact moment, drowning my voice in a wall of sound. When it passed, the worker was gone. Completely. As if he'd stepped into the darkness between cars. That night, my phone buzzed while I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. A message, an image, from an unknown number. My heart dropped when I opened it. It was Ethan, standing on a platform, the same platform. His face pale, strained, eyes wide with fear. Behind him, just beyond the edge of the frame, the dark tunnel, and emerging from it something tall, wrong, a shape that bent the dim light around it as if the shadows were trying to hide it. Under the image, one line of text, "Come get him." I didn't remember screaming, but my throat felt raw as I backed away from the platform edge. The old man, whatever he was, had vanished, as if someone had plucked him out of existence. The tunnel was quiet again, except for a rumble far in the distance that sounded like a train but never came closer. My flashlight flickered, then steadied. I forced myself to breathe. I'd walked miles underground. I wasn't even sure which direction would lead me back, and now I had proof that Eastwell Station wasn't just a ghost story, it was occupied. I turned toward the tunnel I'd come from, determined to head back the way I remembered. But as soon as I took a step, I noticed something that hadn't been there before. A door. A metal maintenance door built into the wall beside the tracks. The hinges looked rusted, but the handle was shiny, as if used recently. I didn't want to open it, but the idea of staying on the open platform felt worse. I pulled the handle. The door swung inward silently. The smell hit me first. Old wood, damp concrete, and something metallic. I aimed the flashlight into the narrow room. It was filled with boxes of old MTA equipment, coils of wiring, and something else. Polaroid photographs taped to the concrete walls. Hundreds of them. My breath caught. Every photo showed the same thing, the Eastwell Station platform. Some were decades old, judging by the clothing styles. Some looked recent, but in every single one, a figure stood on the platform. Same posture, same outline, same coat, the old man. I swallowed hard, stepping closer. The Polaroids formed a timeline, starting from black and white images from the 1950 seconds and leading all the way to a picture taken with a modern date printed in digital ink. OCT 23/2024, 2 days before I'd arrived in New York. In that last photo, the old man wasn't alone. Someone else stood at the edge of the platform, a dark silhouette, leaning, as if listening to something below the tracks. My flashlight shook, scattering shadows across the walls. I didn't want to know who or what the silhouette was, but something in my chest pulled me toward a box on the ground beneath the photos. It was wooden, cracked at the corners. A tag on top read, "Property of MTA, do not remove." I opened it. Inside was a stack of notebooks, each labeled with a year. Someone had kept records. The last notebook was from 1997. I flipped through pages filled with cramped handwriting notes about unexplained noises, unauthorized trains, sightings of a man on the platform after electrical shutdowns. Then I hit the page where the writing abruptly stopped. The last entry read, "He isn't waiting for a train, he's waiting for someone who can hear it." I snapped the notebook shut. Enough. I shoved it back into the box and stepped out of the room, except the platform wasn't empty anymore. Something moved in the far end, slow, human-shaped, watching me. I didn't wait. Instinct took over. I bolted into the tunnel opposite the figure, trying to stay on the narrow maintenance walkway. My flashlight beam jittered over rails, pipes, and darkness that felt too dense to be natural. The air grew colder. My breath formed clouds. As I ran, the distant rumbling grew louder, like a train approaching, but the rails stayed still, silent. The sound wasn't physical. It felt like something humming inside my bones. I tried to outrun it, but the tunnel seemed endless. My legs burned. I checked my phone again out of desperation. No signal. Battery at 3%. Then the hum changed. It became a voice. A whisper threading into my ear, even though no one was close enough to whisper. You heard it. You came. I stumbled, slamming my shoulder into the wall. My flashlight clattered to the ground, spinning light across the ceiling. I snatched it up and kept running. The whisper rose behind me, overlapping with itself, layering like a crowd speaking in sync. You came. You came. You came. Panic clawed at my throat as the tunnel widened unexpectedly and opened into another chamber, a bypass tunnel, abandoned long ago. I lunged into it and immediately realized I wasn't alone. The chamber was filled with shapes. Dozens of people, no figures, standing still, their outlines faint, almost translucent, like shadows peeled off the wall and left upright. They faced the far end of the chamber, all of them leaning slightly forward as if listening to something ahead. I froze. My flashlight flickered over them, and wherever it landed, the shadows didn't move. They didn't react. They just listened. To the hum, I was now certain only I could hear. My heartbeat hammered in my ears. I stepped backward, trying not to breathe too loudly. Then one of the shadows shifted, just a fraction. Its head turned not toward the sound, but toward me. Then another did the same, and another. Their shapes sharpened, darkened. They began to separate from the darkness behind them. That was enough. I sprinted toward the opposite tunnel exit, not caring where it led. The humming intensified until it felt like needles behind my eyes. The ground sloped upward. My lungs burned, then stairs. Not a lot, maybe a dozen. I climbed them 2 at a time and slammed into a locked metal gate. I pounded on it, desperate. On the other side of the bars, I could see concrete, a public corridor, dim emergency lighting. A sign hanging from the ceiling read, Chambers Street, an actual open station. Hey! I shouted, forcing my voice through the gate. Help! Someone help me! No one answered. The platform beyond looked deserted. My phone buzzed as it died completely. I shoved it into my pocket and scanned the gate for a weakness. One hinge was rusted, old, maybe weak enough. I braced myself and kicked. The metal groaned, but didn't give. Behind me, the humming swelled. I didn't turn around. I could feel something coming up the stairs. I kicked again, harder. The hinge snapped halfway. Third kick. The gate swung open enough for me to squeeze through. I shoved myself into the corridor and slammed the gate closed behind me. The humming stopped instantly, cut off as if a switch had been flipped. Silence. My breath echoed in the empty hallway. I stepped backward from the gate, not looking through the bars. I didn't want to see what might have reached the top step. I forced myself down the hallway toward the main platform. A train screeched into the station above me. Normal, loud, metallic, more comforting than anything I'd heard all night. I didn't stop until I reached the stairs up to street level. I didn't look back. Not once. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the shadows turning toward me. The humming was gone, but my ears rang with the echo of it, like it had carved itself into my skull. The next day I checked the map. Chambers Street was nowhere near where I should have exited. I'd traveled miles underground, but somehow ended up blocks from my uncle's apartment. That alone made my skin crawl. I packed my bags. I didn't tell my uncle the truth, just said New York wasn't for me. He understood. Before I left, I researched Eastwell Station again, determined to figure out what I'd walked into. But everything, every comment, article, rumor had vanished from search engines, like the station had been wiped off the internet. Only one thing remained: a Reddit thread with a single comment from a deleted user. It read, "If you hear the train that isn't there, don't follow it. It's not meant to stop for us." Weeks passed, then months. I moved back to Maryland, got a new job, tried to rebuild my routine. Sometimes I convinced myself it had all been a hallucination triggered by exhaustion and anxiety, my brain trying to scare me. But then, last Tuesday, I was waiting alone at the metro platform near my apartment. It was late, almost midnight. The tunnel was quiet, too quiet. No wind, no air displacement from an approaching train, just stillness. I checked the time. 5 minutes until the next scheduled arrival, and that's when I heard it. A faint humming, deep, familiar. It didn't come from the tunnel. It came from the darkness behind the employees-only service door near the platform end, a door I'd never seen opened before. A cold pulse climbed up my spine. I tried to step back, but my body froze, not out of fear, but because the humming vibrated through the concrete under my feet, up through my bones, into my jaw. Then a whisper seeped through the hum, threading into my ear the same way it had underground in New York. "You heard it once. You can hear it anywhere." I turned toward the service door just as the overhead lights flickered. The humming grew louder, like something massive was passing beneath the platform, something without wheels, without metal, without a physical shape at all. Then the whisper said my name, my full name, slowly, like someone learning how to pronounce it for the first time. The service door handle twitched. My train pulled into the station at that exact second. Brakes screeching. The humming cut off. The handle stilled. I got on the train without looking back. I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't. I don't want to know. But now, I hear things sometimes. Faint rumbles in places, with no tunnels beneath them. I see shadows standing too still in the corners of my vision. And every night, when everything else is silent, I swear I can hear a vibration under my floorboards like a train passing somewhere impossibly deep below. I moved states. I changed my number. I avoid subways. But I can't outrun a train that doesn't need tracks. A train that doesn't follow maps. A train that isn't meant for us, but is still looking for the ones who heard it. I don't know how long I have until it finds me again. But if you ever hear a rumble underground that no one else reacts to, don't follow it, because some stations go missing for a reason. Some trains do too. And once you hear the one that isn't there, it won't stop calling until you answer. I used to love trains. The rhythmic rumble, the predictable schedule, the feeling of motion while everything outside blurred into streaks of color. It all made sense in a world where most things didn't. But that was before the 3:33 train. Before the night that split my life into before and after. My name is Jeremy Cole. I grew up in Scranton, Pennsylvania, a place known more for its old coal mines than its train system, though the Electric City Trolley Museum still gives the town a weird vintage charm. My father worked maintenance on the Lackawanna rail line for 28 years. He was the reason I got into trains in the first place. When I was little, he used to take me to the old, abandoned sections of track they kept closed to the public. "Every track has a story," he'd say as he shone a flashlight down into endless tunnels. "Just listen long enough, and they'll tell you." I didn't understand what he meant until the night he disappeared. He'd been working the night shift inspecting lines 4 and 5, the ones that ran closest to the old mine shafts, and he never came home. They found his tool belt on the tracks. They never found him. I was 16. The police told us the ground probably gave way beneath him, that he fell into an uncharted pocket. They said it like it wasn't anyone's fault, like disappearing into the earth was just something that happened. But I never believed it. Because the night before he vanished, I heard something. At exactly 3:33 a.m., I woke up to what sounded like a train passing our house. Except there were no trains scheduled on that line after 1 a.m. And when I looked out the window, the tracks were empty. No lights, no movement, just a cold echo rolling across the rails. I tried to convince myself it was a dream until the morning they told me my dad was gone. It's been 9 years since then. Enough time for a normal person to move on. But I'm not normal. I became a night shift security guard for the Scranton Transit Authority because it was the only job that gave me access to the tracks my father vanished on. I told myself I just wanted answers. Closure. Proof that he hadn't just disappeared because of negligence or bad luck. What I found was worse. Much worse. It started on a Tuesday in late October, during one of those freezing early mornings when the fog settles so low it feels like you're walking through someone else's breath. My shift ended at 4 a.m. I usually spent the last half hour patrolling the old maintenance tunnels under the main station, mostly dark, unused pathways lined with ancient electrical boxes and pipes that creaked like they were alive. The tunnels were built in the 1922 and never really updated. My flashlight beam would always pick up little swirls of dust that made the air look haunted. That morning, at exactly 3:33 a.m., the lights in the tunnel flickered. It wasn't unusual old wiring, older bulbs, but this time they didn't flicker back on. They just died. My radio crackled with static. Then a faint sound broke through the silence. A hum, deep and far away, like a train approaching. At first, I thought I imagined it, my brain filling the dark with familiar noises, but the sound grew clearer, sharper, the way real trains do when they're closing in. The problem was, the tracks near me hadn't been active in 5 years. I wasn't supposed to be near any active rail at all. I aimed my flashlight down the corridor toward the main line. The beam struggled against the fog that had crept in through the ventilation shafts. And then I saw it. Or rather, I saw the light of it. A headlight, blurred, like it was shining through water. It moved toward me, a glowing orb swallowed by darkness, but growing brighter by the second. My heart hammered. A train. An actual train on a decommissioned track. But there were no sounds of wheels. No metal grinding. No vibration under my boots. Only that hum, steady and unnatural, like an electric current running through the air itself. I pressed myself against the tunnel wall as the light swelled, terrified the thing was going to appear out of the darkness and crush me. Instead, it passed. The light swept across me like a search beam, cold, white, almost clinical, and then continued down the tunnel, slowly fading until I was left in pitch blackness again. I didn't breathe for a full 10 seconds. The train was silent, impossible, and familiar. When the lights sputtered back to life, I found myself shaking. My flashlight flickered weakly. My radio was still dead. I backed out of the tunnel, keeping my eyes fixed on the rails. And that's when I saw the footprints, fresh ones, leading from the tracks straight toward me. Work boots, same size my father wore. I followed them with shaking hands, my light tracing each step until they stopped right in front of me. No turnaround, no sign of someone walking away, just ended, like the person had walked into a wall and disappeared. My entire body was buzzing, adrenaline forcing my brain to make sense of something that made none. I should have left, called it in. Anything, But instead, I reached for the one thing I always carried but never thought I'd need: my father's old inspection flashlight. Heavy, steel, still scratched from years of use. Mom gave it to me after his funeral because she said it was the one thing he never went on shift without. I clicked it on. The beam was stronger than my work-issued one, clearer, warmer. I swept it across the walls, the floor, the ceiling. Nothing unusual. I let out a shaky breath, then the beam landed on something above the tunnel archway, writing, tiny, scratched into the concrete, as if someone carved it with a metal tool. I stepped closer, trying to make out the words. My stomach turned to ice when I realized what it said. Not gone. Follow the light. My knees went weak. It was my father's handwriting. I knew it. I'd seen it on 1,000 grocery lists and notes he left stuck to the fridge. He always pressed too hard with the pen, carving faint lines even in the paper underneath. The same angle, the same slant, the same capital F he always exaggerated. My father had been here, recently, or something pretending to be him had. That night changed everything. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that silent headlight passing me in the dark, and my father's message carved into concrete. I told myself I imagined it. I was overtired. Tunnel lighting played tricks. But exhaustion doesn't carve words into cement. The next night, I returned with a plan. If the train came again at 3:33, I'd follow it, or the light of it, whatever it was. Something had happened to my father down here, and something wanted me to understand it. Midnight passed without incident. I walked the tunnels like usual, but my nerves were frayed. Every drip of water, every groan of steel made me jump. At 2:57 a.m., I positioned myself near the same decommissioned rail I'd seen the light on. At 3:10, my radio staticked once. At 3:21, a cold breeze swept through the tunnel, though there were no open ventilation shafts nearby. And at 3:33 exactly, the lights died. The darkness was instant and total. I raised my father's flashlight just as the hum started. Distant at first, then building, like a heartbeat coming alive in the metal around me. The beam of my flashlight cut through the fog, and the headlight bloomed into existence again, far away, then closing in. Silent. Smooth. Like it wasn't touching the tracks at all. My breathing grew shallow. I held my ground. When the headlight reached me this time, I stepped onto the tracks. The moment I did, the hum surged, vibrating through the soles of my shoes. The air felt thick, charged, and then the world blinked. A flash white, formless, soundless, hit me like a gust of wind and passed straight through. When I opened my eyes, the train was gone. But the tunnel wasn't the same. The concrete looked older, darker. The posters on the walls, torn, faded, were ones I hadn't seen in years. My radio hissed, then cut to silence. The rails beneath my feet gleamed like they had been used recently. And far down the tunnel, someone stood. A figure, motionless, facing me, wearing a maintenance coat, my father's coat. My heart stopped. I whispered, "Dad?" The figure didn't move, but the light behind it did. A faint glow beginning to bloom. A train headlight coming from the wrong direction. Coming toward him, coming through him, and then he lifted his hand, slowly, like he was pointing at me. My throat tightened. I stepped forward, but the hum grew so violently loud it rattled my skull. The rails beneath me thrummed, and then without warning the figure dissolved, like a shadow wiped clean. The glow intensified. I realized too late the train wasn't stopping. It wasn't slowing. It wasn't even real in the way anything in this world should be, and it was coming straight for me. I turned and ran, full speed. the hum chasing me like a storm. The air around me bent, warped, twisted like heat waves. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see what was behind me. I didn't want to see if the train had a driver, or passengers, or faces. I sprinted until my lungs burned, until the tunnel lights flickered back on all at once, and the world snapped back into itself. The hum vanished. The air cleared. The rails were rusted again. The posters modern. The tunnels familiar, normal. But nothing felt normal anymore. Because for the first time since he disappeared, I didn't think my father died. I thought he was taken, and whatever took him just found me. I didn't report what happened. Not because I was scared they wouldn't believe me, though I knew they wouldn't, but because I was terrified they would. Whatever I saw in that tunnel wasn't meant for the living. And the moment I admitted it out loud, it felt like I'd be giving it permission to follow me home. For the next 3 nights, I avoided the tunnels at 3:33 a.m., staying near the lit sections of the station. But no matter where I stood, I felt watched. The shadows behind vending machines seemed deeper. The air vents sighed like someone whispering my name. Even in the break room, I kept catching glimpses of movement in the reflection of the microwave door, like someone walking behind me. Someone in a maintenance coat, the same coat my father wore the night he didn't come back. The 4th night, I made a decision. If my father was trapped somewhere, some pocket of time or reality tied to that impossible train, I couldn't just ignore it. I owed him more than fear. He raised me alone. He gave me everything he had. And he always told me, never walk away from someone who needs help, even if you're scared. So I returned to the same tunnel, same path, same rusted rails, and at 3:33 a.m. on the dot, the lights died. The hum rose, like it had been waiting for me, like it had known I'd come back. My father's flashlight felt like lead in my hand. The air grew heavy, pressurized, and then the headlight appeared far down the tunnel, silent, drifting, eternal. This time I didn't move aside. I stood on the rails. The hum pulsed through me like a second heartbeat. I whispered, "I'm not running anymore." The moment those words left my mouth, the headlight surged forward faster than before, blinding in its intensity. The world flashed white. For a second, I felt weightless, like everything around me had been peeled away. When the light dimmed, I wasn't in the same tunnel anymore. The air was colder, thicker. The walls were the same shape, but older, as if untouched for decades. The lights overhead were dim, flickering like dying stars, and far down the track, I saw a figure, my father. No hesitation this time. I shouted and ran toward him, but something was wrong. The tunnel seemed longer, stretching the more I ran. Each step echoed like I was moving through a hollow shell of the world. "Dad!" I yelled. The figure lifted its head, slowly. He didn't move toward me. He didn't wave. He simply raised one hand, palm outward, like he was telling me to stop. I slowed, breath shaking. Something clawed at my nerves. Then a sound echoed from behind him. A metallic groan, a low rumble, a train, coming from the darkness behind his silhouette. But the rails didn't vibrate. The air didn't shift. The sound wasn't physical. It was like hearing a memory of a train instead of a real one. "Dad, I'm here." I took another step. Something in the tunnel changed. A ripple, a pressure. The ground beneath my feet felt less like concrete and more like a surface stretched too thin. And then my father spoke. His voice was wrong, hollow, like it was coming from somewhere inside the walls instead of his mouth. "Jeremy," it called, not loud, not urgent, but terrified. Don't follow the train." My throat tightened. "What happened to you?" The silhouette wavered slightly. The humming swelled. "It takes whatever listens," he said. "Whatever steps too close." The glow behind him brightened the oncoming headlight of an unseen train, but distorted, flickering like a dying flame. "Dad, I can pull you out," I insisted, stepping closer despite the instinct screaming inside me. He shook his head slowly. "No, it only gives what it wants you to see. But your coat, your handwriting, not me." His voice broke. "Not anymore." I felt the first real stab of fear, not from the tunnel or the train, but from the realization that whatever intelligence lived here, whatever mimicked my father's presence, had been watching me for years. It knew my memories, my grief, my weakness. The hum spiked. My father, whatever remained of him, turned his head sharply, as if something behind him demanded his attention. And then the headlight roared forward, a tidal wave of white fire swallowing him whole. I screamed and ran, the hum chasing me like a living thing, vibrating through my teeth. The rails beneath me warped, bending like soft metal. The tunnel walls stretched, thinning like skin pulled taut. Behind me, I heard the train, silent and deafening at the same time, a paradox of sound that felt like it would split me open. My legs buckled. I fell to the ground, scraping my hands. But the moment I touched the rail, something surged up my arm, cold, electric, alive. A vision slammed into my head. My father standing on the tracks years ago, staring at a headlight, reaching out to it instead of running. My father stepping forward. My father vanishing into white. Then, impact. Not physical, emotional, like a crash inside my skull. The world went black. When I opened my eyes, I was on my back in the modern tunnel again. The lights above me buzzing faintly. My throat burned. My ears rang. For a moment, I didn't know where I was. Then it all came flooding back. The hum, the headlight, my father telling me not to follow, but something else too, something new. A message that carved itself into my mind like a warning branded into the bone. It's coming for you next. I didn't go to work the next night, or the night after. I barely slept. Every time I drifted off, I heard a train horn in the distance, slow, mournful, and wrong. At 3:33 a.m. every night, my bedroom lights flickered. My phone buzzed with static calls from unknown. The rails in my nightmares gleamed like wet bone. I knew the truth now. Whatever the 3:33 train was, it wasn't a vehicle. It wasn't even a haunting. It was a predator. A thing that moved between moments, between worlds, feeding on the people who wandered too close to the boundaries between them. And it had noticed me. A week after my last encounter, I moved out of Scranton, took the first job I could find in Ohio. An office job. Boring, safe. No tunnels, no trains. I rented a third-floor apartment far from rail lines. I thought distance would help. For a while, it did. Until last night. I woke up at 3:31 a.m. No reason, no sound. Just dread curling in my stomach like a fist. I sat up. The room was silent, still, and then, faintly, I heard it. Not outside, not through the floor, but inside the walls. The low hum, growing louder. My alarm clock flickered to 3:32. The hum deepened. My breath turned to frost in front of me. 3:33. The lights snapped off, and the headlight, white, silent, impossible, washed across my bedroom wall as if a train were passing straight through the building. I froze. My father's flashlight lay on my nightstand. It flipped on by itself. The beam pointed directly at my bedroom door, and on the door, was writing, fresh, scratched into the wood, "Follow the light." My heart almost stopped. That wasn't my father's handwriting this time. It was mine. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The hum rose. My doorknob twitched, turned, slowly. Something pushed the door open from the other side. And there, standing in the hallway, was the silhouette of a man in a maintenance coat. My father's coat, his shape, his stance, and from behind him, the glow of the train's headlights spilled through the walls like liquid light. My father, or what was left of him, spoke one last time. "Run!" The headlight flared. The hum exploded into a deafening silence. And now I'm writing this from a motel off I-80, 2 hours from my apartment, not sure if I should keep running or if it even matters, because I've realized something that chills me deeper than anything in those tunnels. The 333 train doesn't need tracks. It doesn't need tunnels. It only needs one thing: an audience, someone who hears it, someone who sees its light. And now it knows I do. If you ever hear a train at 3:33 a.m. when there shouldn't be one, don't look for the light. Don't follow the sound. Don't answer it. Because once you see the headlight of a train that isn't there, it never stops looking back. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. Stories like these remind us that the deeper we go underground, the less we understand what's waiting in the dark. If you'd like more stories just like these, consider subscribing and turning on notifications. It helps the channel more than you know. Until the next night, stay safe and stay curious.